Okay, today we're going to be talking about how to play Doflamingo properly, how to build the deck, how the deck works, when it's good and when it's bad. Um, I want to clarify. I've been playing Doflamingo since OP 8.5. I went to an in-person regional tournament and I got top 32, I think. Um, I have been playing a lot of the deck since then. I've tried out pretty much every single card that you can try out reasonably, I guess, for this deck, and I'm pretty confident that I can pilot it correctly. Uh, the deck is obviously uh, very easy sometimes. Like the skill floor for the deck is very low. You can just be a mediocre Doflamingo player and win a lot of things. But I think that the deck has a very high ceiling if you're piloting it properly. Like you can make plays pretty much out of nowhere. The deck is very explosive and it's a lot of fun. And apparently it's not dying anytime soon. Um, you can pretty much use this guide all throughout OP10 and maybe OP11 depending on what gets banned and whatnot. So let's get started. So this is the core of your deck. You're going to be playing pretty much four of each of these cards. The cards on the left are your setup cards, I guess you can call them. Perona, Sengoku, and Teach, obviously. They make the deck very consistent. We'll talk about Teach in a while, but pretty much Perona and Sengoku. Perona is essentially a free mulligan, even if you discount the fact that she sets up your leader ability for free. Sengoku, I think it's crazy not to run four of him. We'll talk about Sengoku specifically when we're talking about some matchups where he's key to winning. And then, of course, your four guys. I don't think there's a lot that can be said about Jinbei, Weevil, and Boa. They're pretty much very straightforward. They're great. You play them on curve. It's great. You cheat them out with your leader ability. They are huge tempo. And Trafalgar Law, probably my favorite card in the game right now. The card is crazy broken. It makes the deck insane, and it essentially warps the meta, warps deck building at least to a point where you cannot play any four drop that sort of bricks in your hand. Like if your four drop doesn't have any immediate value, then you can pretty much kiss it goodbye, and it's non-existent in the meta. Just because Law is so over centralizing. Um, so it's definitely. I think that this card, even if I think it's pretty much the most broken card in the deck, I would rather not see this card banned because if you're a good Doflamingo player, you can benefit so much of Law. It's insane. Um, okay, so this is the way you play pretty much. We're going to be speed running this part a little bit because everyone has played against Doflamingo, I think. But if you're a new player, so ideally on your first turn you play Perona. On your second turn, if you're going first, obviously on 3 down you just swing with your leader ability. You get whatever card you placed on top of your deck, and then on 5 down you play a guy. Let's say Jinbei could be any guy. Ideally, you play Jinbei early because you need the aggression. Um, but any four drop will do. Just play your Jinbei. You have one extra down, so you search with Sengoku, maybe you swing 6. If you play Jinbei to Boa or just Boa, you swing 7, and that's fine as well. And then on 7 down, you play your guy plus your leader ability. Maybe Josu sometimes. It depends. Then your even curve, which is a little bit weaker because it's less fast. Ideally, you start your turn. This is double Sengoku, but it could be Perona as well. Um, you just go for your double small guys. You play your Jinbei and your Weevil. You play your Boa. Boa is very important when going second because if you don't see Teach, Boa fixes your leader curve, and this essentially means that you can play Boa plus Doflamingo leader effect. So if you're going second, you should prioritize grabbing Boa if you don't have Teach. And then I done you just play double guys. One thing that's very important to keep in mind is that you're both, even when going first, obviously you'd rather play Perona, but if you're going first or second, you pretty much always want to have a small guy on board. And the reason you want that is because Law and Josu, we're going to be talking about them specifically a little bit later, but you need fodder for them, so you need something on the board. So even if you're going second, you just pretty much want to play out Perona, even if you know you're not going to be playing, you're not going to be using your leader ability on 4 Dawn, because you're going to be playing, let's say, Jinbei Weevil into like Enel or something. You're not going to swing 7, but still, you always want to drop your Perona or your Sengoku on curve. And the same applies for Buggy. If you have no other 1 Dawn plays, you're pretty much always going to play with Buggy because you want something on board that you can bounce back to your hand to get in a tempo advantage. Now, this is where the fun of the deck starts. This is, I would say, the strongest Doflamingo curve. You're going first, turn 1, you play Sengoku, not Perona. You have Teach in hand, or you look for Teach. I would not recommend gambling on the Sengoku if you're going first. Even if you're gonna play Teach on 3 Dawn, you're always gonna drop a 1-drop, even if it's Perona, just because you want to have more options. Like maybe you see Weevil on top of your deck and you want to play Weevil plus Teach. That's a very strong play because it goes neutral in hand and it allows you to swing 7. So you're pretty much always playing a 1-drop. You'd rather it be Sengoku if you're planning on playing Teach, but sometimes your Sengoku finds a Teach and that's fine. On 3 Dawn, you're playing Teach plus the leader ability. On 5 Dawn, you're playing 1 character and using Teach to get another character off for 1 Dawn. So that's insane. And then if Teach still hasn't died, you're pretty much just playing Jozu and using your leader ability. And that's pretty much game, I would say. I don't think there's any deck in the format that can come back from this. If you get this curve, you pretty much just win the game straight off of that. And I think that's one of the things that makes Doflamingo so strong, is that he has this sort of Exodia hand where you just instantly win if you curve out. Going second, the curve with Teach is a little bit weirder. So you start, you play your Sengoku, you play your Peronas, whatever. Turn 2, I would recommend for most matchups that you play Teach into Jinbei Weevil instead of just hard playing Jinbei and Weevil. This is especially true in the mirror, where our playing pressure is very strong. And I would say it's pretty much true for most matchups, except for maybe like Bonney, and definitely not into Enel. Then on 6 Dawn, you want to play your Boa still. You don't have to, but ideally, I would say most of the time, the curve doesn't align perfectly so that you always have a fresh hand, or like a healthy amount of cards in hand. So you typically still want to play Boa and swing 7 and just get the value of the Boa. And then on 8 Dawn, you're trying to get the same thing done with Jozu. The cool thing about going second, if you have Teach on board, is that you can just hard play a Sengoku, play the Jozu, grab the Sengoku back, and then you still have 1 Dawn. So if somebody removed your Sengoku or you didn't see your Sengoku earlier, you can just farm value off of that. You're going to be seeing Jozu and Law combined with Sengoku is pretty much your card draw engine, and this means that if you're playing properly, you're pretty much never running out of cards, and that's very important because keeping a healthy hand is key to 1, using Teach effectively, and 2, defending your board. Because if not, what's going to happen is if you abuse Teach without consideration for how many cards you're keeping in your hand, let's say you're just using Teach to drop like Boa and like a 2k counter or something like that, instead of playing like Weevil and the 4-cost ST Moria, then what's going to happen is that you're going to run out of cards in your hand very quickly, and then your opponent is just going to attack into your guys and they're going to die, and you do not want that to happen. Okay, so this is the deck list that I used. As you can see, well, I don't know if you can actually see the number, but at the time of making this video, I'm ranked 49 on the ladder, which, it's not insane, but it's pretty decent, I would say. This is the list that I would recommend running. I think that this list in the current meta is the best list that you can run. We have 4 Perona, 4 Sengoku, 4 Buggy. I used to run Kaya as well before, but I think that just because of the fact that Buggy is a guy into Teach, you just kind of want to run him. 4 Teach, obviously, the card is cracked. Then you have 3 Pudding, and I guess the only weird things that you can see here is only 1 Gravity Blade. I'd rather I really like the core deck, you know, the 12 2K counters, Sengoku Perona Teach, your 4 cost guys. And I'm only running 2 Moria. Moria is great later on, but he's not as good early. So you really don't want to run a lot of them. You want to prioritize other cards. And the reason I'm running 3 Pudding and 1 Gravity Blade is the fact that Pudding essentially just instantly wins you the Black Eel Luffy matchup sometimes, and it's pretty much the only guaranteed way to fight against Black Eel Luffy properly. Like unless you're running a very heavy event based deck where you're running like 4 Gravity Blades, a couple Red Rocks, or something like that, you're not gonna beat Black Eel Luffy without playing Pudding at the very least once, if the Black Eel Luffy player is good at least. And just being able to see Pudding on curve is just very important when you're playing as Black Eel Luffy. So that's why I'm running 3. Also, the card has counter for some reason, which means that you can pretty much run her for free. And we're running, apart from like the core of the deck and the 12 2Ks, we're running for Jozu. I think Jozu is pretty much a mandatory card at the very least in this meta. It allows you to fend off a lot of your worse matchups. It's good against Black Eel Luffy because it buys you time if you play him on curve. He's good against Enel because he buys you time if you play him on curve as well. He's just great into Bonney, pretty much the best card into Bonney. He's good in the mirror. He has counter. He's good into Shanks for when they play Yasop on curve. And we're running 1 Gravity Blade. I guess this Gravity Blade could pretty much be any card. I just like having 1. I think 1 Gravity Blade is fine, but the Gravity Blade could be like the 3rd Moria, a 4th Pudding, whatever tech card of your choice. We're going to be talking about tech cards a little bit onwards. Okay, or maybe right now I forgot where I put this part. Okay, so these are other cards that you might have seen on the Flamingo decks that I'm not running, that I have tested out. For Ghost Moria, the vanilla one, he's good. He shines, I would say, into Red Purple Luffy and Shanks. He's sort of like reverse ST Moria in the sense that he's sort of crappy when you see him later, but he's very good on curve if you don't find your Weevil or your Boa into specifically Shanks and Red Purple Luffy, because you really want to be swinging 6 into those matchups. So he's sort of like a 5th Weevil, obviously a lot worse than Weevil, but he's fine. He has counter. You can play him. He's okay. We're going to be talking about Perfume in a while, but yeah, Red Rock is just, it's okay into NL. It's great into Teach, obviously, but so is Gravity Blade. Great into Shanks, obviously. Fine into RP Luffy, I would say. It sort of gets you out of some sticky situations. I wouldn't, I don't know. I've tested it out a lot, and I would say that typically you want to be doing something else with your Dawn, and slapping a card with no counter in a deck like Doflamingo, especially if you're not running Kaya, is sort of like costly in and of itself, because there's going to be games where you see like Red Rock on turn 1, and you're essentially playing that entire game with 1 less card. Especially because there's going to be a lot of games where you're never going to play Red Rock at all. So I really don't like the breaky cards. I want to have like a consistent deck. But you can obviously run it. It's fine. It has trigger. Might save you some time. And then there's the 2 Kaidos. I think the secret Kaido, the 10 drop that's behind, is terrible. I would advise against running it. It's awful in the mirror. Like typically in the mirror, if you can play that Kaido and not instantly die, it means you are gonna win the game anyways. So it's just a bad card. It's not good into Bonney anymore because Bonney runs a lot of Shanks. It's obviously fine into Bonney, but it's not great or anything. Just play it and then it dies. It's fine into Shanks. Like it's not good. You can play him, and I guess, and he's okay. But it's not gonna get you any crazy wins or anything like that. He's fine into Black Eel Luffy, but so is the other Kaido. And the other Kaido, the Secret Door Kaido, I think is actually underrated. It's insane into Bonney, pretty much the best card in the matchup. Bounces Kid and the blocker, which pretty much it means you win the game instantly because you're setting the Bonney player an entire turn back, which is obviously very good. It's good in the mirror. If you're fighting it's not great, but if you're fighting, if you're stuck in one of those games where you play Jozu, your opponent plays Jozu to bounce your Jozu, you can play Kaido, and Kaido breaks the Jozu stalemate because it bounces Jozu and the two cost speech back to your opponent's hand. So he has some utility in the mirror. He's fine into Enel, worse than the other Kaido, but pretty much if you play this and it doesn't hit and the Enel doesn't cast Raigo into it immediately, you're gonna win. Which I guess is the upside of both of the Kaidos. They help into Enel, but they're pretty much gonna Raigo your guy anyways, and I don't think I can count on seeing your one or two copies into Enel specifically. And then we have Perfume. I think Perfume is the biggest bait card in the world. The card does nothing. Like essentially, you draw it early, it does nothing, and if you draw it late, maybe you cheese a win here and there, but you're only using it if your opponent has 0 life, or maybe if you see like double Perfume in hand and you go for like double 15 to your opponent's face. It's just very rare that Perfume is going to be useful. I think you can, if you're playing properly, you can play pretty much every game in a way where you don't need to see the Perfume to cheese off a win. Plus, obviously the added benefit of Perfume is that when you're playing against Black Eagle Luffy, even like they don't know you're not running it, so they have to play around it anyways. If you were to go to, the only reason I would think you should run Perfume is you should run one copy if you're going to a tournament and the tournament has an open deck list. Because I think a lot of the advantage of Perfume is your opponent has to play around it or else they risk instantly dying. But reality is that the card really doesn't do that much besides making your opponent play suboptimally. And even then, like even if you had an open deck list, I would advise against playing Perfume. You can definitely beat Blackbeard without it. You don't need it to play against Blackbeard, at the very least in the OP09 meta. Maybe on OP10 it's different. But if you're running Perfume for a specific matchup, there's better cards that you can run in its place. If you're playing as Doffy, Gravity Blade is better. Another guy is just better. If you're playing to Bonney, Red Rock is better. 10 cost Kaido is better. Same thing goes. Well, obviously it's like the card is very bad into Enel. It's bad in the mirror. It's just a brick. The only time you see it having some semblance of utility in the mirror is when you like swing into your opponent and it triggers out a life and it cycles for free, which is obviously like a terrible place for a card to be in if it's only useful when it triggers for its cycle. Like it's just a bad card. Yes, sometimes you can like get like a cheesy win where you put someone at like 0 and you top deck the Perfume and it's great and you're having fun and whatever, and your opponent wants to rage quit the game. But I don't know. I just don't see it. I think it's a very bad card. Okay, so we'll be talking matchups now. Now you'll see I wrote down whether you want to go first or second. That's pretty much self-explanatory. Then on the left, you're going to have Perona or Teach, depending on whether you'd rather have the Perona curve or the Teach curve. This is obviously dependent on whether you'd rather prioritize pressure or your hand in the matchup. And then some matchups also have an extra card on the right, which is the card that you most want to see. Like it's sort of like key for you to win. So we'll start talking about Shanks. Into Shanks, the Teach curve is better. You want to go first. However, sometimes you don't want what you ideally want to see happening is you play Teach not on your second turn, but you play Teach on your third turn when you're at 5 Dawn. The reason you want to do that is because ideally you play turn 1 Perona, and then the Perona puts a 6k guy on top of your life, or of your deck, sorry, or it places, it's either that or Jinbei and you have Boa on hand. The reason you want to do that is because Shanks is going to pass with 2 Dawn up. Now, if you didn't play Perona on the first turn, you're playing Teach, you're swinging into the Shanks, and you might catch Gum Gum Red Hawk, and then your Teach is going to die. However, you want to be very careful that if you're doing this, you don't place a 5k attack character on top of your deck unless it's Jinbei. That's the reason you don't want that to happen is because Doflamingo's effect triggers first before Shanks. So what's going to happen is Shanks is going to lower the power of whatever guy you drop off the top of your deck, and then it's going to get killed by Red Hawk if it has 5k power. However, and this sort of a weird interaction. The order of the way the effects stack is Doflamingo's effect triggers first, your character gets played. Shanks' effect triggers second, so he lowers the power of one of your characters, and then Doflamingo's character gets its effect. So if you play Jinbei, you can drop Boa after the Shanks effect, and you can use the Boa effect to place a Dawn under your Jinbei to save it. So that's sort of like a weird interaction. But of course, obviously, he can still kill your Teach, so that's why you don't want to play him turn 2 if you can avoid it. But you definitely want to see Teach in this matchup because the Blank Pressure is very important. Pretty much everything else that goes for Shanks goes for RP Luffy as well. They are leaders that essentially defend 6k. Shanks can only do that once per turn, but your 6k bodies are very good because they swing pretty much for free into the Shanks without giving him like a free block for the turn. Because if you swing with your 5k attackers, he essentially gets like a free card every single time you swing, or at the very least every single turn. And yeah, that's pretty much it, I guess. Boa's very good. She really shines in this matchup. She's really strong. The fact that she can block is not irrelevant here because Shanks mostly wants to curve out into the Flamingo, so that's very important. But yeah, it's not a hard matchup, I would say. Like if the Shanks doesn't see perfectly, you're probably gonna win. Josu is very good in this matchup as well, especially for the curve when they play. Essentially, you drop your guys, and then Shanks, when he's at 5 or 6 done, is going to play Yasop most likely. Or it's either Yasop or like Blocker Rayleigh or like Marco, something like that, and then you can answer back with Josu, bouncing the guy into his hand, and that gives you a lot of tempo advantage. So that's very good. Then Rob Lucci, it's sort of like a more of a brain dead matchup. Ideally, you want to play Perona over Teach. The Perona curve is better here because you want to have a healthy hand. The way you beat Rob Lucci is not by swinging hard into him, it's by swinging a lot of times. So Jinbei, obviously, Jinbei in this matchup, pretty much the only card that allows you to play into Rob Lucci. It guarantees that you're going to have at the very least one body. Ideally, if you see like 3 Jinbei, you're probably going to win every single time. You want to prioritize defending your board sometimes, but it's very important that you have a decent enough hand so that you can still keep on pumping guys. Now, the reason you want to go first is because Rob Lucci's best curve in the matchup is playing Jack on 7 into Gecko Moria plus Tempest Kick on 9. And if he does that, you're not coming back from that because it means the Jack kills one of your guys the turn he gets played, and then the Gecko Moria kills 2 of your guys with the Tempest Kick, and the Jack kills another guy. And essentially, Rob Lucci gets to a point where he pretty much plays Gecko Moria combo every single turn. And if there's a Jack on board, you're going to be losing 3 guys every single turn, which pretty much makes it impossible to come back from. So what you want to do if you're going second is, if you see Josu, you want to play him on curve. Because if you play Josu on curve, your opponent cannot play Jack. You block the Jack on 7. So you go Josu on 6, and he either has to choose whether he plays the Jack and he doesn't turn him around for fear of you swinging Josu very hard into the Jack, or he just has to kill your Josu and you blocked the Jack, which is what you want to be doing. Gecko Moria is a lot less threatening when he doesn't have Jack backup. So yeah, I guess that's pretty much the gist of it. I guess specific tips. Forecast Law is very important in this matchup. You want to bounce Lucci's crap back into his hand because Lucci needs to be using most of his Dawn for removing your stuff. So like if he plays the Brook, you want to bounce him. You want to bounce it back. You play Forecast Rob Lucci, you bounce it back to his hand anyways. It doesn't matter that he's going to play it again. You just want to bounce it back to the Rob Lucci's hand, because every single time he plays the Rob Lucci, he has to be spending 4 Dawn for doing that. So it's a good trade for you. And then I guess I don't know. You kind of want to prioritize. You want to try to keep a law in hand for the final push of the game. Ideally, you just drop law, bounce Rebecca back, and kill the Lucci off if you can. But it's fine if you don't. You can still win, but it's just something to keep in mind. We'll go to Black Luffy in a second. Purple Luffy, you want to go first. Teach is the most important card in this matchup. If you go first and you see Teach, you're pretty much winning every single time. Pretty much every guy is important in this matchup. You just hit Purple Luffy hard, and you're pretty much going to be killing him. If Luffy goes second, he is sorry. If you have to go second, sorry, if Luffy forces you to go second, the matchup gets a little bit harder because his curve is better, and he gets to answer your stuff better. But it's still a decently good matchup, I would say. You should be favored to win anyways. It's just a little bit harder. Now, Black Luffy is actually a matchup where you have to. I mean, you have to know how to play into the Black Luffy for starters. Like how to use your Dawn is very important. When to swing, when to not swing, also very important. What I will say, sort of like simplifying in general, is you want to only be swinging 7k swings into the Black Luffy. If you're not swinging 7 early game before he activates his leader effect for the first time, you don't want to be swinging 5. Like if you're spending 4 Donny to play like Jinbei Weevil, don't attack because you're giving him the chance to get a free counter off. And the way you win into Black Luffy is finding pudding. The reason I just put Perona here is because Perona is essentially a free mulligan in this matchup. You want to prioritize seeing pudding. I hard mulligan for pudding unless I see like 2 Peronas in hand. I will always hard mulligan for pudding. You want to go second. It's actually easier. Like it's a lot easier in the matchup if you're going second than if you're going first. And the way you want to play it is, essentially you want to be swinging 7 while trying to find the pudding using Perona or Boa, whatever. And in the meantime, you want to be trying, when you're swinging 7, you want to be trying to use your 2k counter Crocodile and your 4-cost Law to bounce the small Luffy, the small Sabo, or maybe the small Ace back into the Black Luffy's hand. The reason you want to do that is because at some point you're going to be at like 7 or 8 or 9 Dawn, and you're going to play pudding and just start swinging your entire board into the Black Luffy. The reason I want to do this is because Black Luffy loses when he has no hand, and he also loses when he doesn't find a way to combo off. And pudding just straight up answers both of the Black Luffy's win conditions at the same time. It guarantees that Black Luffy is going to play with at most 7 cards in hand for the rest of the game. And in addition, it's sometimes you just instantly win off of playing pudding because your opponent doesn't find any of the small Sabo, Luffy, whatever, and he doesn't find Moria. So it means you instantly win if that happens. I don't know. I think it's a matchup where you want to, like, maybe if you get a lucky pudding off, you are going to win every single time. It's not going to take any skill on your part, but sometimes the Black Luffy is going to be able to still keep playing the game after you play pudding, especially if the Black Luffy is good. The better the Black Luffy player is, the better they're going to be at playing the game after you pudding them. So that's when you have to, know how to play into Black Luffy. Okay, so how do you play into Teach? Teach is probably out of all the meta decks, Teach is definitely the easiest one. Until they get Kusan and the 6-cost event, the Liberation, it's pretty free. You want to see Perona, you can try and rush Teach, and it's fine. Like, it's not like you're going to do bad if you play like the 2-cost Teach and start using the effect. But the reality of the situation is that if you do that, there is a non-zero chance that you're going to run into a trigger off of life. And a lot of teaches run Shockwave, a lot of teaches run 4 Shigan, or at the very least they run 3 of them. And that means that if you're low on hand and you hit a trigger, you could lose a game that you should never be losing anyways. Um, so yeah, you want to go. Ideally, you go first. You just play Perona on curve. You set up yourself for like free leader effects, and then you just start playing sort of like a value oriented game. Like it's not hard to win against Teach, but it is hard to play in a way where you win every single time, which I guess should be your objective. And I don't know. I think if you can play a game that's harder but wins you every single time you play against Teach, you should play that way. Um, so yeah, you just want to play Perona, you abuse your leader effect. Eventually, you're going to run the Teach out of cards, and you're just gonna win. It's not going to be weird for you to be put in a position where you have to be swinging 14 at phase every single turn and just keeping like one or two Baronas on board. You just swing 14, your opponent has to block with your Tenka's Teach, and then the Tenka's Teach dies. And if you put the Teach in that position, eventually you're going to win anyways. So there's really no rush in this matchup, I would say. Then Red Purple Luffy, I guess he's sort of like high rolly Shanks in a way. You want to go first into him. You can play Teach freely here because they don't run Gungam Red Hawk. Um, and I guess he's sort of like faster Shanks but with less hand. 9-cost Mom is sort of an issue if you chains a couple. It's not my strongest matchup. I want to make that clear. I sort of struggle into RP Luffy more than I should. It's still not hard as a matchup, I would say. If you go first, you're pretty much guaranteed to win if you play it properly. However, Red Purple Luffy is a lot more high rolly than Shanks in the sense that if he sees like the 9-cost Big Moms and 4 of the Gungam Giants and things like that, he is going to be able to win against you, but it depends on him seeing a lot of his good cards in the matchup. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. And then on the right, we have what I would say are traditionally the hardest matchups for Doflamingo, Bonney and Enel. So we'll go Bonney first. I mean, this is pretty much just Jozu the matchup. What you want to do against Bonney is you don't want to play your Teach because it's going to die for free because he's going to get rested. So this is the matchup where Teach is dead. You're never playing him. He's bad. And I would say when I play it, I pretty much try to hard mulligan for Jozu. Some hands are just very good, and I keep them anyways, especially if they have Perona, because it allows you to dig deeper for your Jozu. But this is the matchup where if you see like 2 Jozus, you're probably gonna win. Your objective in the matchup is you just take the early game slow. You play your Jinbei Weevil on 4 without trying to use a leader effect so that Bonney cannot get value by swinging to your risked characters. And then you just drop your Jozu, grab a Sengoku, and you're going +1 at that point, and you're bouncing back like Cavendish, Carrot, 5-cost Bonney, all of these 5-cost dudes that Bonney runs. And your objective is when they play another one of those, you just play another Jozu, bounce the guy back, and what you want to see happening ideally is when they drop 8-cost Kid, you've played enough guys and you've attacked him enough where you put him in a position where you just swing into the Kid like a bunch of times for 8, and then the Kid eventually dies because Bonney runs out of hand. That's, I would say, the proper way to play the matchup. Gravity Blade is very good in this matchup if you're falling behind because it bottom decks like 2 carrots, and that's obviously insane. I guess as an extra tip, you should be careful about the existence of like 10-cost Doflamingo. The way Bonney beats you is by playing 10-cost Doflamingo with like a Cavendish or like a Uroge or whatever, or like the Donquixote Pirates guy that costs 3 that I don't remember the name of, Dellinger, I think. And then they pass, and at that point you lose the game. However, if you see your Josephson curve, the matchup is definitely playable, and what you want to try to do as well is when they drop Kid, they're going to play Kid with a 3-cost or lower blocker. You want to be able to bounce the blocker in case of an emergency. So having 4-cost Law in hand is very important in this matchup. And yeah, I would say that's pretty much it. It's sort of hard in the sense that I think Bonney is favored, but it's not game where your game plan is hard to execute. Like if you see your cards, you should win, but you're not going to see 5-4 doses every single game. So yeah. And then finally, Enel. Enel is a very tricky one. I think it got a lot worse with the addition of the 4-cost Kuzan. I think right now, I think on OP8, 8.5, the matchup wasn't as bad. You could definitely play it and play it very solidly. However, 4-cost Kuzan is a powerhouse of a card because he kills your Sengoku and he punishes your hand and he makes your life bigger, which means he can kill your Jozu easier. What you want to do in this matchup is you want to go second. You don't want to prioritize using your leader ability. I would say you don't use it until deep into the late game. And what you want to see on turn 1 is Sengoku. Sengoku is the most important card into Enel. And the reason Sengoku is so important is that you want to use Sengoku as a value engine so that you have a 20 card hand. And at some point, the game sort of revolves around you put Enel at 1 life, you play Pudding, you pass the turn. And then either Enel heals himself with Yamato, Ace, or Katakuri. And then it's your turn again. You swing with your entire board. Because you played Pudding before, Enel is always going to have like a 7-card hand. You put him at 0 life and you repeat the process. At some point, Enel is either going to run out of cards to heal because you played Pudding before, or he's going to see 4 Ace and you're going to lose the game, and that is fine as well. The reason you want to make your hand beefy with Sengoku throughout the early game is because at some point, Enel is going to have to attack into your characters, and you want to be able to save them. So if you have a 5-character board, you put Enel at 0 life, and Enel plays, let's say, Ace, he's going to be swinging 5 into one of your guys, 9 into another one of your guys, if you had Yamato on board, and 10 into one of your guys with Ace. At that point, you're either swinging back into Enel because you defended your guys and you win the game, or maybe you lose to a trigger or something. It could happen. Or Enel is going to be able to kill 2 of your guys because Yamato and Ace are going to swing over them, and you lose the game at the spot. You don't want that. You don't want that to happen. So you need enough counter in hand. You need to be able to pick up throughout the game enough cards so that you can counter out of the Ace swing, out of the Yamato swing, and you can save your tiny guys so that they can attack again into Enel. If you don't have at least 4 attacks on board when you're trying to push your game, you're probably losing that game because a trigger can save Enel. You're at most going to be swinging like 7, 7, 8 or something like that, and that's not going to be enough to punish whatever amount of cards he has in hand. So it's definitely a hard matchup. And another thing that you should be keeping in mind is if you go second, it means Enel is going first, which means his natural curve will be just play Gedatsu on curve or like 5+ Nami or something like that. And it means you can do Sengoku on turn 1, and then on turn 2 you play Law, you get Sengoku back into your hand, and you dodge Kusan that way. And that is very important because if you get your Sengoku sent to life, the amount of value the Enel is generating is probably going to lose you the game on the spot. This guide was a little bit harder to explain, I guess, than my other guides because I think the Doflamingo is a deck that I think it's a relatively easy to play deck in concept, but I think there's a lot of like tricky, weird situations and like techie cards for matchups. They're just weird. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. I would be happy to answer them. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave a like. It helps a lot, and it lets me know that you enjoyed the content and that it was useful for you. You can find me playing on the OPTCG sim pretty much every day. So if you meet me in a game, feel free to say hi as well. And as always, thank you for watching.